Yeshua, your King of praise. Shalom, everyone. This is Messianic Rabbi Buzz Tremé, the Jew teaching you. Welcome to our Bible study. Yeshua, you are the way. Yeshua. Well, welcome to our study. We have been into this for several weeks, and we are nearing the end, but I don't think you can see it yet. It's like when we drive to Houston. Are we almost there? Yeah, we're close, but can't see it yet. Okay, today we will be starting on, or we'll be going further rather, with the Promised Land Covenant. And we only have the Promised Land Covenant, then the Davidic Covenant, and then the New Covenant, of course, which fulfills everything, all of the other covenants, and it brings everything to fulfillment when it's finished. Brings us out of time and into eternity. We have the millennial reign. What is it in the Bible? There's a pattern in the Bible that is always foreshadowing the millennial reign. And a lot of people aren't aware, most people aren't aware, that it's in there for that reason, foreshadowing the day when Israel would rule. And of course, if you're grafted in, the Bible tells us that you're now fellow heirs with God's people. So, you will reign with these people for 1,000 years, and then the final judgment, the great white throne judgment, the new heaven, new earth, and then everything is perfect and we continue. But no sin factor. The nations will have received salvation. So, what is it that the millennial reign, what is it that foreshadows it? There's a pattern that God keeps giving. Back in the Mosaic covenant, God gave a sign to the Jewish people, to Israel, and that sign was what? It was the sign of their covenant with Him. And it is the weekly Shabbat, the weekly Sabbath, the seventh day. Okay? It's a day of rest. It's a day of perfection, a day of completion. The Bible has these patterns instilled in it over and over. Yeshua said that the Sabbath was made for you guys, and I am the Lord of the Sabbath. So that tells us a lot about it. Israel was promised that they would be over the nations. That happens when we go into the millennium. They are the chief nation. 1,000 years they will teach the nations about God. Good stuff. Now, because they will be resurrected, be complete. And you will be part of that package because you're the grafted in Gentiles into that one new man. So, as God gave this covenant, and the sign of this covenant, the Mosaic covenant, is the Shabbat, the weekly Sabbath, the weekly seventh, then so He gives the Promised Land covenant. This happened in Moab. This one happened in Sinai. Mosaic covenant happened in Sinai. This one happened 40 years later in Moab. This is when the book of Deuteronomy was written to describe this covenant. This covenant incorporates the Mosaic covenant into it. It basically says you can't obey the Promised Land covenant unless you obey the Mosaic covenant. And we'll look at those scriptures. But the sign of this covenant is the 7-year Sabbath. Every 7th year was Shemitah. Shemitah is what they're called. And they refer to, that word refers to the release. And it means the land labors for 6 years. And then they are to let it be released from its labor. So the land as well as the people have these Shabbats. And it's these patterns. And King David And Peter, however you say his name, Peter, in the New Testament, refer to a day being the same as 1,000 years to God. It's the same. 1,000 years as a day. And a lot of people have tried to make something out of that, and others have discounted and said, just a figure of speech. Now, I don't think that's not a figure of speech, because we see that there are 4,000 years from here to the cross, to the issuing of the new covenant. And then we have 2,000 years now of church history, right? That gives us 6,000. On the Jewish calendar, we're in the year 5783, I think. And in a few days, we'll enter into 84. I hope I'm right.
No, 82 going to 83.
Is it 82 going to 83? I just can't retain everything. Anyway, so they dated from the making of Adam. Remember, God determined it in eternity, and then we enter into time with the revealing of his covenants, and he does so in the Garden of Eden to mankind. From this time God made man. And remember, man is the human race. In Genesis 5, whatever verse it is, he refers to Adam as male and female, the human race. Okay? So when God made the human, the forefather and foremother of the human race, Adam and Eve, this happened 5,782 years ago. Okay? That's almost 6,000. In 18 years, we will be at the year 6,000 will have been completed, and it's time to enter into the 7,000th day. If a day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years a day. If that's what God's looking at. Everything in the Bible, I mean, this pattern is so over and over repeated. It's amazing. So, popular consent in America is any day now. You know, we're all flying away, and it has nothing to do with Israel. It's all about the Americans, basically. I have to be careful. I'm an American, pro-America. But we're not the promised land, and the American people are not the church of the living God. This is a bigger body, and it starts with Jews, goes to the Gentiles, ends up including the latter remnant of Jews. Then the body's complete. Now, what was I saying? So you have this pattern about a Sabbath day. That gives us 218 years. If you think between now and, let's say, you know, as long as I've been Christian for quite a few years, somebody was always on the cutting edge of saying, look, this prophecy is being fulfilled. It's time. They did this in the Dark Ages. They did it. The year 666, the Catholic Church said that's the end of the world. And the great judgment happens. Never had anything to do with Israel. Remember, they had already dismissed Israel. We enter into replacement theology, which is not true. And so then the year 1000, when it didn't happen in 666, they said the year 1000, that's it. By the way, they weren't going by the Jewish calendar, which God set everything in motion according to the Jewish calendar, the Hebraic calendar. They're going by the Gregorian, which was the Emperor Julius Caesar's calendar. Okay? Now, prior to that, everything was based on the founding of Rome, 753 BC. So, you know, we often think the calendar we're using has always been around. Oh no, it's a modern thing. In fact, in the 1700s, I believe they dismissed about 21 days. It was that far off. And all the Gregorian calendar is, Pope Gregory, you know, the only thing that is an adjustment to the Julian calendar by Julius Caesar. So prior to that, we operate from the birth of Rome. So everything was dated from the birth of Rome. However, the Israeli people were around for millennia before the Roman people ever were, the founding of Rome. So the Jewish people go by their calendar, which is the Bible calendar, and very often we base things on our modern calendar, which is really not modern. So we have to be wise and think like God wrote, the way He wrote the book. We need to be thinking down those lines. When the 1,000 year happened and the Lord didn't return and the end of the world didn't happen. And by the way, they believe the Roman Church taught that they were in the millennium. Okay? It was only a figure of speech. The Bible just was, So they said, we're actually the kingdom of God. The Roman kingdom was called by the Roman people the kingdom of God. Amazing? And we know that's not so. Anyway, when 1666 came around, they said, the end is coming. And it didn't happen, did it? Let's see, the different churches have prophesied. Seventh-day Adventists prophesied a couple times the date of the return of Christ. Missed it by far. He still hasn't returned. They had to go back and rework some things. Every now and then somebody does. How about the guy in 1988? Or he maybe wrote the book in 87, but in 88 it was on the market, and he said 88 reasons or 888, I don't even remember the name, but I know that he got in big trouble and ended up in a big lawsuit. But it was 800 or 88 reasons why Jesus will return to earth in 1988. And people sold their homes. They charged up credit cards because they said, we're going to rapture out and there won't be, and so on. Did it happen? We're in the year right now, 2022 on the Gregorian calendar, and we're still waiting. Is the temple rebuilt? No. Have the nations heard the gospel of the kingdom? No. Matthew 24:14 says they will. So, if you have the nerve to actually look at this thing objectively, not subjectively to what you want it to say, you'll start seeing a pattern. Therefore, there's a few years to go to this thing, quite a few. We have nations that have not yet assumed their places. Wickedness is going to be on steroids. Right now, it's just on an LSD high. They're just smoking, it's on smoking pot or something. But wait until the world, the nations are so wicked, you just can't imagine what that's going to be like. But it'll get to that. We're not there. As bad as it is, we're not there. I'm thankful that I got to be in countries where they had experienced Holocaust, the real deal, where people were chopped with machetes, where people were tortured publicly. Just unbelievable what took place. Read history, you'll see the tragedies that have happened historically. We're not in those tragedies. I wish things weren't the way they are. Don't we all? And we'll do everything we can to change it. But this is not. The Lord's not. I promise you, in the morning you can get up and He will not have come tonight. Okay? Okay.